All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of Murder of the Gray State. Now I know the title of the video, I forgot to change it, so it'll be adjusted after the stream goes 100% live. After the stream tonight at least. So it'll probably show up as something like Comic Wars related. However, tonight we are going to break down the entire Crowley case, and we're going to prove why David Crowley is actually innocent. Believe me, there's tons and tons and tons of things to go over, but we're going to be only going over a select, give or take, about 8 or so different topics, which are going to be crunched in with a few other topics. But we're going to break it all down as quickly as possible. And we're going to start tonight with the overview of the case. So the narrative is currently that, and there used to be multiples, keep this in mind, but currently there is a singular narrative that simply David Crowley murdered his daughter, then his wife, and then commit suicide, labeling it a double homicide suicide. This is what the Apple Valley Police Department believes. Now, whether they truly believe this or not, it's really up for debate. There's some saying, well, it's not that they really said, yeah, this is what happened, but then there's others saying, well, this is what it shows. Regardless of that, it doesn't really matter. End of the day, this is what they basically stated, that David Crowley had to have done it. There's nobody else who could have done it. This is, without a doubt, this is what has been said. So let's go break this down. Is there anything in the crime scene that proves David guilty? The answer is no. There's nothing other than DNA evidence on his handgun. Doesn't mean he fired it, though, because it's his handgun. Keep that in mind. We have to go and take these things into consideration here. So, on the topic of handgun, who fired it then? David Crowley's prints are on it. So, did he do it? Well, let's look at a few things that are going to show some irregularities, if you will. First and foremost, I'm going to show you guys this image here. This is a little infographic I made. And this is a while ago, but this shows off some information here. Now, what this shows directly is back spray, if you will, kind of. Now, back spray, this is where this gets interesting. If this is done by a handgun, there would be some smaller droplets. Misting, if you will. Now, there is no misting. Why would there be misting, though? Well, because it went in one side and it came out the other, and it comes out at a high rate of speed, so high velocity, if you will, and it releases blood spatter. However, what we see here appears to be more medium. Also, on top of that high velocity blood spatter, generally, keep this in mind, you're going to get big droplets, you're going to get small droplets, you're going to get everything in between still, you're going to get those. But that depends on the closeness of the body. Now, the high velocity blood spatter, there's no misting anywhere. We didn't get to see little tiny droplets of blood, really. We got to see some smaller ones, yes, but you get high velocity, you get really, really tiny blood spatter, and you're going to get the bigger and you're going to get the smaller and everything in between, like I said before. So just to clarify that, we've got everything but the misting. So what does that really break it down to? And you can see this when we look into this. I'll go and zoom in for you guys. What we got here is medium velocity spatter. So what do you get medium velocity spatter from? There's certain weapons that can give this. You know, of course, there's the typical. What do you get the medium from? Well, a hard impact, right? So this is where you would get some kind of a weapon hitting somebody. So you're going to get that. But you're also going to get very, very low velocity as well. I mean, yes, I know there's the different categories, I know, but what I'm just for clarity's sake, you're going to get a lot more like heavy amounts of blood coming out. You're going to usually get a gash or something like this, or some kind of bigger lump sum of blood that's going to come out, and then it's going to continue to come out, and it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until the wound closes, or at least it attempts to close. But if you kill somebody, well, their body's not really going to be recovering, therefore you're just going to get kind of just drip, 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 you know, or just gush, 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 gush. But this is somebody was hit. Hit pretty hard, I would argue. Not necessarily super hard, but hard enough. But it's not from gunfire. Now, how can we say that, oh, there's no gunfire? Well, only way high velocity gunfire would say, okay, there's not going to be a whole lot of misting, is if somebody had something on the other side of the head. And also, where the gun came through. So that's the only way high velocity is really, you're going to go and remove those blood droplets like that. But even then, how do you explain the blood spatter here? That's where we have the question of, was somebody hit, or is this just kind of thrown? Because this isn't high velocity. This is at best medium velocity. And even then, you could even argue, couldn't this just be mimicked? Absolutely. Somebody grabs a paintbrush, you can just flick it, for instance. You can grab it on, you can have blood in your hand, flick it. You don't have to flick very hard, and it'll produce these same results. Any artist can tell you that this is how you can, this doesn't quite look, well, I don't want to say any artist can tell you this doesn't quite look real, but as an artist who has painted, you do spatter painting, this kind of thing is a thing. You can see this is, it doesn't go really past here. It's almost like a line. It's kind of weird, unless you're doing it artificially. It's not actually blood spatter. But that's fine. And this is if this back spray. That doesn't even account for everything on the other side. There's no blood over there. There's no pool of blood below Rania, which is allegedly where this is supposed to be her right here. But none of that. So this doesn't make sense either. So we know that, okay, well, this isn't gunshot. So did whoever did this, if we're going to go and consider David, did he just hit somebody? No, doesn't appear to be. Hence that line there. This looks like more or less it was flicked. Doesn't really look 100%. Now, could you argue this could have been done, you know, by hitting somebody? Sure, but who? And then you gotta look at body position and things like this. And that's where this doesn't add up either. After that, now we have to go and think about bullet trajectory and the bullet holes. Well, here's the bodies. Bullet hole is right around where this circle, it says, I believe this is B1. Right over here. Here's 9 over here to the left of it. There's, I believe, a 29 down here with the arrow pointing down. It's that one just above that one. Well, that's where, roughly where the bullet hole has David's DNA on it. Is that? Well, that's kind of weird. Then you go over here, near 6 or so, this little line of numbers, and there's a bullet over here, bullet hole over here, which has got Rania's blood on it. Now, if anybody's looked at the blueprint of the house, a bullet came from over here, in this area, around the 6 or whatever, and it went flying into the basement. Went through the floor, and it hit the basement wall, going toward the back of the house in the basement, so towards where the bedrooms would be on the top floor, but down below. So how does a bullet do that if she was killed over here? That doesn't exactly make sense. Especially because even then, the body position is actually incorrect, and her body is more towards David, and David's also cocked a little more towards Kamel. And Kamel also was missing her hands. There's that too. And they were underneath her body, and she was missing her head. David was missing his head and his right hand. Rania was missing her right shoulder all the way through her. The entire right arm is gone. A little interesting here. But they really want you to believe the dog did it. He's the one who ate her arm and ate his hand and ate both her hands and their heads. It's a very hungry dog, apparently. With very little to show over that. They didn't do any testing of the dog either. Therefore, is that admissible? Not really. So that's already shot down. And even if, like I said, you look at the bullet holes. Kamel was shot twice in the head. And just to bring that up, let's take a look. So Kamel was shot, the bullet entrance for the first one is the posterior parietal region. I got you covered on that. So, posterior parietal region. Should be able to see the skull over here. That is, well, here's the parietal bone. Posterior means the back side of it. So, okay. Shot from the back of the head. Then I went I went left to right out through the interior parietal region. So interior parietal region, which means it came from the back of the head out through the parietal bone. So it was kind of like right through. Okay. So that's kind of weird. But then she's got two bullet holes. And this one's from back to front. And then front to back, apparently. Depends, I mean, like I said, you read the medical examiner's report, and this is directly what it says. It says back to front and then front to back in it. Which one was it? But it goes from posterior parietal region. This is the second bullet wound. So if we go from back to front, came from the back of the head to the front of the head. Okay, well, but the other one's saying front to back. So you get the frontal bone region going out through the posterior parietal region. Either way, a little weird. On top of that, then you got Rania. So that came from parietal scalp, which is the entrance wound. So you're looking somewhere up here. And then went through post-auricular temporal bone. So now we're looking for the auricular temporal bone, which is, let's see, so it's somewhere here. It's like right here, I believe. Somewhere between here and here. But still, end of the day, okay, let's look at this. What does it say? It said it went from right to left. From right side, parietal scalp. So it came out the left side. Okay. But then it says inside of the head, the bullet goes leftward, then downward, then comes backward. In a child's head? Really? Their bones are much softer. It wouldn't slow down this process. It would actually be even easier for the bullet to travel through the head. So this makes this very weird. Well, that doesn't make any sense either. And you got those bullet holes. Well, they don't line up with those bullet holes, though. Because if it came out Ranya's left side, that's out towards the kitchen. So that makes that a little weird. And then you got Kamel. Hers lines up more with the basement hole, but not really, because either way, that needs to go magic bullet style. Goes in at an angle and then comes out through a different way, changes direction after it's shot. It goes right through the floor and goes into the wall. Yeah, okay, right. So that's wrong. Then you got David Crowley's. We got to be looking at the position on him. You look where his body is. He's right here. He's the big body here. His is the only one that's somewhat possible, but not really still. His is the closest to a possibility of making sense, but not quite. So there's 3 things we're already disproving. These are things that are key to be able to prove David's guilt. Can't even prove it here. But now we get into the real fun things. Here's David's. This is what it says here. So item 57 is the one that apparently killed David and went into the attic. Bounced around a ton. Got in the attic, though. Police didn't realize this at first. Mason Hendricks, Chris Klein, and Danny August Mason came in the home. Actually, I take it back. Danny August Mason didn't make it in the home, I don't believe. It just depends. If you go off of what Mason Hendricks is saying, you got one story. You go off what the other people are saying, different story. But Chris Klein was allegedly there. In fact, we know he was there because a neighbor actually reported his truck for suspicious activity at the home. Chris Klein admitted that he was there. There was no permission for him to be there. Not from the father, not from the brother, not from the family at all. A little weird. But okay. End of the day, police missed this. And it was up to those guys to say, no, the bullet was there. They look at it, and they've got a bunch of white matter inside of the bullet, but or the bullet fragment, but they've only got a little bit. And once again, sure, okay, David's DNA is on it. Does that prove he did this, though? Did he commit suicide? No, because even then, the bullet hole doesn't quite match up with the trajectory. So that doesn't really line up either. Okay, let's break into the next one. Mold. I've done a few shows on this before, but let's take a look at some forensic mycology. I'm going to go over some basics here. So is it noteworthy? According to the report, fungal growth on a corpse, a case report, plays a role in the determination of the time of death, burial place, and time of leaving the body where it was found, and cause of death, hallucination, and poisoning. Forensic mycology is considered as an auxiliary method to the determination of the time of death, just like forensic entomology, which is the usage of bugs and their growth throughout the body. According to the report, fungal microbiota dynamics as a post-mortem investigation focus on Aspergillus, Penicillium, and Candida species. Forensic mycology is a relatively new term describing the study of the species of fungi present in cadavers. It can have application in forensic medicine, particularly determination of the fungal groups to help establish the time of death. That's from 2003. Well, that predates this case. Let's continue. According to the report, Forensic Mycology Current Perspectives, determination of postmortem intervals from mold growth on corpses. providing trace evidence linking people and objects with places. Huh. Lots of things it can do here. Let's continue. So, in David Crowley's autopsy report, what do we got? The 720-gram liver has an intact, smooth capsule with postmortem mold growth. Right there. We'll continue. The parenchyma is tan brown and soft. Sectioning reveals no mass lesions. The gallbladder contains no bile or stones. The mucosal surface is green and velvety. What about Rania Crowley's autopsy? 190-gram liver with an intact, smooth capsule with postmortem mold-like growth. They both got mold-like growth. So there's mold. The parenchyma is tan brown and soft. Sectioning reveals no mass lesions or other abnormalities. The gallbladder contains a minute amount of bile and no stones. Mucosal surface is green and velvety. Keep in mind, there was food that was recently cooked. So if there was food that was recently cooked, including food on the counter, and curry to be specific, now we just got to determine, was this a breakfast meal or is this a dinner meal? We got those things to consider. Considering they were in their pajamas. If they're in their pajamas, it's either going to be early morning or it's late night. On top of that, the Christmas tree, there is no presents. Therefore, they had to have been killed after Christmas. Okay. We go over their phone reports, and you start finding all sorts of things as well. You start going over their financials. More things show that this is definitely after Christmas for sure when this occurred. Then you got to look at the mold growth, but we'll get in that in a bit. So just a little perspective here. I'm going to read off another story just to kind of show how this was used. A young woman was found dead in a flat in West Yorkshire in January 1996. The forensic pathologist noted that there was some mummification and skin slippage, and it was necessary to determine how long the woman had been dead before her body was discovered. There were bluish green and gray mold colonies present, and the West Yorkshire Police Support Service took swabs from these, and then measured the sizes of the bluish green colonies. Over a period of 28 days, an experienced medical mycologist studied the growth rates of the fungi on 2 artificial media at a temperature similar to those where the body was found, which is around 4 degrees Celsius, and the room temperature, which is roughly around between 21 and 24 degrees Celsius. To comparing the growth rates, mycologists concluded that death occurred a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks prior to 16th of January 1996, when the area of growth on the right cheek was measured. That was from Forensic Mycology Current Perspectives 2015. Ironically, the year David and his family were found. But I digress. Let's continue. So, what do we got here? Now, we're going to do a little conversion here, and yes, I know it's going to be a little off here, as I know that test 2, it's not 100%, but it's very close to about the temperature. So, test 1, 4 degrees Celsius, that's 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Test 2, 20 to 24 degrees Celsius is somewhere between 68 and 75.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Somewhere around there. I know that's a little off. I don't remember exactly what the number is, but the Crowley residence thermostat was 68 degrees Fahrenheit. There's a little interesting tidbit there. This work contributed to a man being convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. That is of that case, the woman that was found dead. All from that. This is once again from Forensic Mycology, Current Perspectives from 2015. Let's continue. So what else do we got? So what do we got? What can be determined at face value from this information? Now, if we were to go over Kamel's autopsy report, there is no mention of mold. They cover a lot of the same information, no mention of mold. So if there's no postmortem mold growth, she has to be the last to have died. In the order of deaths, now this is where you have to take a look at the bodies. I'm not going to show that. Do not even ask, because the answer is no. There's plenty of ways you can get a hold of the video, but there's probably videos out there even showing that, but there's also plenty of crime scene photos and people that have got access to it. So you guys will probably have to go out and take a look. I'm not handing it out, and I'm also not going to be showing them off. So that's basically what we got from this. Is you look at the size of the mold growth on Rania, and then you go and look, and from what you can see, there's no mold growth on David. Therefore, larger mold colony on Rania. Therefore, she was the first to die. And that's just based on that alone. Followed up with David, since he did have mold growth, and then ending with Kamel, since she had no mold growth. It also shows quite a big significance in time of death. Time of each death can be closely approximated based on growth data. Now, I don't have the full growth data. I'm still getting measurements and all this and getting data as much as I possibly can about the mold, but this is what we have on that. And what we know for a fact, well, this is the order. But then we've also got body positions. We have to get back to that again. So if we're going over body positions, their bodies are in a little bit of a weird position. Now, this was a rough sketch, not actually how the bodies were positioned. But this is a rough sketch by the police department. So if this is what they were saying, position they're actually quite opposite. David was going vertical. If you're looking on the screen like this, he'd be vertical, basically. And somewhat, he'd be more kind of angled. And then you've got Rania, which would be vertical with her head facing the top of the screen. And Kamel would have both of her arms underneath herself. So that's a little weird. We've already kind of covered body positionings, but there's no pools of blood. After somebody dies, there will be a pool of blood, especially in the condition their bodies were in. So if there's no pools of blood, that says a few different things. Were they killed there? They killed elsewhere in the house and then cleaned up, which ironically, there's a weird bathtub with some equipment there, and it looks like there could have been some bleach been used in the tub. But I digress. There's that. But were they even killed in the home? We don't actually have a full answer on that quite yet, because there's no pools of blood. There will be pools of blood, and no, paleo did not lick it all up. Not to mention there was also dog food, bags and bags of dog food in the home, unopened. None of it was touched. Why is that? Was he actually scavenging on the bodies, or was he being fed somewhere else? After that, then we have to go and take in consideration David's mummifying hand. Now, we know his hand was his only hand he had, which was his left hand, was mummifying. Now you can account for, okay, well, the position it was in, blood just pooling downward. Yes, but it was actually mummifying. You look at it, that was mummification process, which means there had to have been some air hitting it or some heat, if not both. Where's the airflow coming from? Then we know the heater was set to 68. We know that the back door was open, therefore that heater would have been going pretty consistently. But how's the air getting to him? He would have been dehydrated. His hand was dehydrating. But it was only his hand. The rest of his body wasn't mummifying. Then you got Rania. Her face was mummifying. She was dehydrated. Then you got to look at a few other things. Is it possible the cold could do this? Yes. Cold air can dehydrate as well. And on top of that, when you have a body that's getting cold and warming up and getting cold and warming up, you're going to cause mildew. However, and mold growth too, but there's no mildew. There is mold growth. Is that why the back door was open, or is that why the temperature gauge was set to what it was set at? But once again, this comes back to it's impossible. David could not have killed himself and then his wife. So if he couldn't kill his wife, who killed his wife? Well, Kamel's not going to be able to shoot herself like that twice. So who killed her? And can we exclude David from killing his daughter? It's fair to assume. Well, if he didn't kill his wife, why would he Would he just kill himself? And Camille killed his daughter, and then Camille couldn't kill herself, so how did Camille die? This is where it breaks down that pack theory. Completely destroys it. Does not work. And the narrative doesn't really work. Because the narrative relies on David having to kill his wife as well, and then himself. Well, that doesn't work, so what exactly happened? But we do know for a fact Rania died and then David. It would have had to have been close enough. They had to have died close enough because there was no visible mold growth, post-mortem mold growth on Camille. Well, that shoots that. And we're going to get into our last one because really the order of deaths, we've already gone over. That time of death, I'm still calculating it out. There's a lot of different factors I have to look at, and there's another graph to go over. But we've already proven David innocent here, haven't we? He's been proven innocent for years now. But let's keep going. Last, what we've got here is Allahu Akbar. The narrative stating David used his wife's blood and painted it on the wall. However, there's some problems with this. If David was killed second, who painted the wall? With Camille's blood, because Camille had to have been dead, right? And Camille's hands were a bit smaller than David's, so if this is actually bigger than David's hand, then who wrote it? Now we know it's with Camille's blood. It's her DNA. They matched two of the letters. I believe it was the A and the B. A in Allahu and B in Akbar. But then you look at the photo I've got here. The Allahu Akbar, little opaque picture, right? That's slapped on the wall. You can see parts of it that were completely not even painted. Like repainted in the new after the home was cleaned. Why was that little bit not repainted? A little weird, but I digress. That was also done with two hands. Front and the back and the left and the right. How do we know this? Because if you go and look at it, you can actually see directly how it was done. Now, is it possible to have done with one hand? Yes, a bigger size than David's. Or made to look bigger than David's. Could have been using his hand. There's areas where it looks almost like it could have been double coated with paint or with blood, but not a whole lot. So, anybody have any questions so far? Feels free, speak up. Let's hear them. All right, well, if there's no questions, make sure you guys like and subscribe. But on top of that, leave some comments. You guys got some questions going over this. Maybe it sparks a question later on. Leave a comment. I'll get to you. We'll go over it. Other than that, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys on Monday night for the second battle of round 2